Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am the host of Independent Thought. My name is Desmond Price. No matter where you are in the world, I want to thank you for giving me a few minutes of your day to hear my thoughts. As always, we have a great show for you today. Now, here are our topics.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Independent Thought. My name is Desmond Price. If this is the first time you are hearing my podcast, welcome to the show. And if you are not already, please follow me on Instagram at Independent Thought. I post to my story daily. That is the best place to keep up with this podcast. So, for today's episode, we are talking about the Senate Parliamentarian. I know it is just absolutely just awesome information I'm about to present to you. It sounds like the most exciting topic I've ever talked about, and it is. No, it's not. Okay, so first, who exactly is the Senate Parliamentarian? Why is her ruling on the COVID bill relevant, and why should you care? Okay, so first, let me set the scene really quickly here. So the reason why we are discussing this today is because the COVID bill, the one that I've addressed on several episodes now, the one that Biden talked about at length during his campaign and when he took office, the $1.9 trillion plan, which is supposed to include the stimulus checks that we were all waiting for, is in the process of now finally reaching the Senate after the House passed it. Now, because they decided to go through this route called reconciliation, which basically allows the Democrats to pass this bill with only 51 votes instead of the normal 60 that you would need if you were to pass something in the Senate. So since it has to go through this special process called reconciliation, every single portion of the bill has to be examined by the Senate parliamentarian, who is a person who basically has to just go over a bill and just make sure that it is eligible for the reconciliation process. So that is the stage right now. The current Senate parliamentarian goes by the name of, her name is Elizabeth McDonough, I believe is how you pronounce her last name. She has held office since 2012. Fun fact about the Senate parliamentarian, their term has no limit, and they are appointed by the Senate Majority Leader. So, in regards to the COVID bill, the Senate parliamentarian looked over the entire bill and she came to the conclusion that the $15 minimum wage that was inside of the COVID bill was not actually eligible to be a part of the reconciliation process because, in her mind, it did not affect the budget, which is the criteria for being able to be allowed to be a part of a bill that goes through reconciliation. I know that a lot of that is complicated, but here's the gist. So Joe Biden, our president, decided to tack on the $15 minimum wage into this COVID relief bill. Now, he has said in the past that he believed that this was something worth fighting for. He said repeatedly that the American people deserved a minimum wage increase. In fact, when he was asked about it back in the debates back in October, he was flatly asked, do you think that now is a good time to raise the minimum wage? To which he replied, absolutely. Okay. So now that the Senate parliamentarian has come out and said that the $15 an hour minimum wage cannot be a part of reconciliation, Biden claims that there is just nothing that he can do and that the minimum wage just will not be a part of the bill. So it looks like the dreams of having a $15 an hour minimum wage are now being scrapped by the Biden administration because of this ruling by this one person in the Senate who you probably never heard of before. I know I'd never heard of them before myself. But let's go a little bit further into this because after Biden came out and kind of just like threw in the towel, most people in the news world also just echoed these sentiments, saying that the $15 an hour minimum wage is now dead because of this parliamentarian's ruling on it. But here's a fun fact that I want you to know. Per the Senate rules, The president of the Senate, who is the vice president, so currently Kamala Harris, has the power to overrule any decision that the parliamentarian makes. That is just the procedure that goes on in the Senate. So I want you to know this much. This is a direct quote here. The parliamentarian's role in the Senate is only an advisory role, and they do not decide what the Senate can and cannot do. The Senate themselves decide what the rules are for the Senate. Okay, so what I'm trying to say here is that the Biden administration, let me just say this clearly, Joe Biden himself is claiming that he is not going to try to pursue the $15 an hour minimum wage inside of this bill, even though it is clearly stated that they don't have to listen to anything that this parliamentarian actually rules on. If they decide that they want to go ahead and move forward with keeping the $15 an hour minimum wage inside of this bill, they can do that, but they're choosing not to do that. And if it sounds crazy to you that they're choosing to just like cop out and not fight for this, and it doesn't make any sense to you, well, you're not alone with that, because it doesn't make any sense to a lot of people. In fact, Representative Pramila Jayapal, a Democrat from Washington, actually was recently on Rachel Maddow's show this past week, and she was discussing just that. I'm going to play that clip for you right now.
I did want to make a clarification, though. The parliamentarian issues an advisory opinion. Once the parliamentarian issues that advisory opinion, it is up to the chair of the Senate to decide whether or not to incorporate that opinion. It's a small technicality, but I do think that we've got to use every tool in our toolbox here, whether it is reconciliation, whether it is, ultimately reforming the filibuster. We're going to need to deliver on our promise to raise the wage for 27 million Americans.
And do you make that clarification about the parliamentarian's opinion being an advisory matter because you think that Democrats in the Senate should use their 50 votes and potentially the tie-breaking vote of Vice President Harris, I guess, to overrule the parliamentarian if she says, no, this can't be in reconciliation? Do you think they should go that far?
I personally do. And I'll tell you, it's because Democrats made a promise to people across this country that we were going to raise the minimum wage, that we were going to put money in people's pockets. It's been 12 years since we've raised the minimum wage. And if we're going to make those promises, we have to be able to deliver on them. Because I'll tell you what, in 2 years, Rachel, when people vote in the midterms, you're not going to be able to say, well, I'm sorry, we couldn't raise the minimum wage because the parliamentarian ruled that we couldn't do it. That's not going to fly. So whether it's overruling the parliamentarian or whether it is reforming the filibuster so we can actually pass a minimum wage bill, I think it is important that we use every tool in the toolbox. One thing, though, the House is going to pass this reconciliation bill with a $15 minimum wage raise in it. So we want to be very clear. The House is going to do our job. Now the Senate needs to do its job.
So now that we are coming back from that clip, I have to say that was my first time, I think, integrating a clip into an episode. No, actually second time. I got to say, I should probably be doing that a little bit more often. That's kind of fun. Anyway, I agree with everything that the representative just said. There is no way that we can just sit here and just let it slide that we're not going to fight for the $15 an hour minimum wage. The $15 an hour minimum wage is way too important just to be punting on because of one person who has no authority whatsoever in the Senate thinks that it might not fly. Okay, this is something that affects a lot of people. When we talk about the $15 an hour minimum wage, there is a difference between the perception and the reality when it comes to this conversation. So, according to the Economic Policy Institute, the perception around who is affected by the $15 an hour minimum wage is it's like teenagers or college kids or young people living with their parents or someone just looking to pick up like a extra like second job to make extra income. That's the perception. It's a bunch of just unqualified people who need to assert themselves better. But that is so far removed from the reality of the tens of millions of people who are currently making this minimum wage. Okay, the reality is that the average age of the person who is making minimum wage is 35 years old. 90% of those people are not teenagers. 28% of these people have children. More than half of the people making minimum wage right now, that is their full-time job. They are full-time making the minimum wage. I know that it's really easy for some people to sit in these ivory towers and talk about like, oh, well, you just need to try harder in life and so on and so forth. I always wonder if those people have actually traveled around this country, because the reality in certain states is not the reality in other states. You go to a state like Virginia or a state like Pennsylvania, a state like New Jersey, New York, where the populations are just incredibly high, and sometimes your only option is that minimum wage job. It's your only option. So to act as if, like, oh, if you just try harder, you can get a better job, then, you wouldn't be in that position. It's just a bunch of crap. There's only so many jobs in some of these communities. And also the idea that, people who have minimum wage jobs, like they don't deserve to live dignified lives. Like, what kind of crap is that? We are the most wealthy nation in human history. And we're acting as if we don't have the ability to at least let people live decent lives with dignity. Let me stop on that soapbox for a second, though. Let's get back to the rest of this conversation, because Biden is hiding behind a meaningless technicality right now that isn't actually preventing anything. He is saying, through his press secretary, through other people in his team, that they cannot fight for this minimum wage increase because of the Senate Parliamentarian. They're using this woman, the parliamentarian, as a crutch for something that does not exist. If he wanted to, he could direct Kamala Harris to tell the Democrats in the Senate to go ahead and push for this anyway. We're not going to listen to the Senate Parliamentarian, but they're not doing that. Okay? And this is just one more lie that I feel as though Joe Biden has told us over the course of this just first month, basically, of him being in office. I mean, he told us when he was on the campaign trail that he would fight for a $15 minimum wage, and he's already punting on it. He told us that he was going to give us $2,000 stimulus checks, and then that turned into $1,400. He told us that the checks were going to go out right away. It is now, like 5-6 weeks into his presidency, and the Senate hasn't even begun their proceedings yet. And if you're telling yourself like, oh, well, at least they're doing it within the first month, they could have done it in the first week, but they chose to do the impeachment trial first. And let me just say in a really small, quick point here that yes, Donald Trump needed to be, held accountable for what happened at the Capitol. I don't disagree with the idea that he should have been impeached, but when you knew, and they knew, that it was never going to go anywhere, that they were never going to get 17 Republican senators to vote against Donald Trump, they could have easily done the COVID relief package first and done the impeachment trial second, knowing that everyone needs this money, this relief now, and Donald Trump was never going to be convicted anyway. There was no need to do that first. They wasted our time by doing it. They could have easily have done that trial later because it would have had the same outcome no matter when they did it. I digress. Joe Biden also said there would be no deportations during his first 100 days. And after that, the only deportations that would take place would be if people committed felonies. He said that during a debate against Bernie Sanders back in March of last year. And in his first month, forget first 100 days, his first month, tens of thousands of people have already been deported. And there is no evidence whatsoever that many people committed any kind of felonies whatsoever. So he's gone back on that promise. And finally, after railing against Donald Trump for being the most, obscene man of all time by putting kids in cages down at the border. Joe Biden is doing just that. But when he got the media backlash that he rightfully deserved the last week or so, all his reply was the facilities won't be open for that long. So where does that leave us at right now? Biden claimed repeatedly that we deserved a better president. That was one of the things that he stressed over and over again when he was running against Donald Trump. We deserve better. Let's build America back better. And to that end, millions of people in this country, constructed get out the vote efforts. They went through and knocked door to door, even during a time of COVID. They made calls all over this country. Social media campaigns reigned everywhere. We couldn't escape people talking about that election. Fundraising went through the roof as millions of people gave their money to Joe Biden, his campaign, all while dealing with the tragedy that we were all dealing with, which was having our lives upended by the coronavirus. So a monumentous effort was given by the American people to get Joe Biden into office. And he is returning that favor by doing basically jack now that he's in office. And if it sounds like I'm being a little bit hard on Joe Biden, it's because I am trying to be hard on Joe Biden. This is ridiculous. Biden needs to deliver for us. We're not asking Joe Biden to do a magic trick and pull a rabbit out of a hat and solve all of our country's problems by snapping his fingers. I'm not asking for, him to do a bunch of things that he's not capable of doing. I'm not asking for anything improbable. I am asking, and what we should all be asking for, is that he do the things he said he was going to do. I know it's uncomfortable coming after the person that we just voted for because we were so happy to get Trump out of the White House that getting Biden in feels like a breath of fresh air. But please, please do not let this guy get away with going back on everything that he said he was going to do because he's not Donald Trump. That is not a good excuse to just let this guy get away with this. And one of the things that we can all do is just consistently make noise about all the crap that he's trying to pull right now, because it's not okay to not fight for this raised minimum wage. The people of this country deserve it. You said you were going to do it. And now, with that being said, I am going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we will have my guest for this week.
Hey, Indie Thought listeners. Has this past year helped you rediscover your creative and crafty side? Well, then you're going to love our sponsor for today's episode. Bathing Beauty's Beads is a full-service bead shop in the heart of downtown Missoula. Whether it's seed beads, semi-precious stones, vintage beads, or just materials to make a project, they have something for every person and every price range. Not from Missoula? Don't worry. They have an extensive online store and they will ship directly to you. Whether you're a beginner or a pro, they'll welcome you and help you make your next project a reality. You can find them online at Bathing Beauty's Beads on Instagram and Facebook, or at bathingbeautiesbeads.com. And don't forget to use offer code INDEPENDENTTHOUGHT at checkout to save 15% on your order.
Welcome back from the break, everyone. This is Independent Thought. I am your host, Desmond Price. Today, we are joined by Tony from the Mudtalk podcast. Tony, thank you for coming on the podcast today, sir.
Thank you, Des. Thank you for having me, man. It's a pleasure, man. It's one of the mom, I made it moments right now, man. So I appreciate it, bro.
You being modest a little bit right now. Tony has a great podcast. I love to have people on that are like in my rotation of podcasts that I listen to. He was nice enough to let me come on his podcast a few months ago. For those who haven't heard his podcast before, please go check it out. But before we get started, whenever I have a fellow podcaster come on my podcast for the first time, I always give them a chance to talk about their podcast a little bit. So just tell everybody, like, what is your podcast about? Like, what are the motivations behind it?
Yeah, man. So I'm the host of the Mudtalk podcast. You can find that on any platform that you stream podcasts on. And I talk a little bit about sports. I talk culture. I talk life, fashion here and there. I tell a lot of stories from my childhood just because I had a rough upbringing, and I try to use those stories to try to help motivate people. So I'm big on youth empowerment and trying to motivate the youth to be business owners and things like that. So I'm big on all of that stuff, man. It's mainly just positivity, man. I think I just want to be a beacon of light to society today, especially the young people, but not only young people, adults too. So yeah, man, that's what I aim to do. I aim to just help make people better, man.
Yeah, and you were telling me a little bit about, some of the things that you had kind of got caught up in when you were coming up. Tell us a little bit more about that. Like, what were some of the things that you experienced growing up that made you kind of like, aim your podcast more towards positivity?
Man, where do I start? I'm like, yo, I want to say, let's see, if I can give you one moment that really, really turned everything for me. It probably was when man, I don't want to downplay becoming a parent because that was a big, big time for me. That did change the way I just looked at life and everything. And a lot of people say that, but I think it was when I got into a situation where I potentially could have been in federal prison. I had to go to federal court for some stuff that just kind of came to my front door, literally. And going through that process, and I had already been arrested a couple of times prior to that.
Yeah.
And when I was faced with a situation that could have ended up with me not being around like for a long time, I prayed so hard to God. I'm like, man, if I get out of this, I promise I'll never be in anybody's court ever again. You know what I'm saying? Unless I'm going to evict somebody out of a property I own, something like that. Like I'll never be in another court as a criminal or being accused of a crime. And so I want to say that was probably the moment that my life turned because I realized, man, this isn't the life I want. Like I don't want to be looking over my shoulder. I don't want to um, wonder if my family is in trouble or I'm risking them being hurt or harmed because of my actions and things like that. And I realized the lifestyle wasn't for me. I realized that wasn't my calling. And so I immediately got an opportunity, ironically, at a young age to like be a basketball coach at like a rec center. And that's
Yeah.
when my passion to like start helping the youth and really like pouring into the youth. That's when it really, I want to say it was born at that time. But I realized during that process that I didn't want to continue down that road that I was on, man, with the life I was living.
Yeah, that's, escaping that kind of like lifestyle is a hard thing. I know a lot of people, they get sucked into that frame of mind to, just that lifestyle in general. For you, was it pretty easy for you to transition out of it, or was it like a kind of like a gradual process for you?
Yeah, nah, it wasn't easy. It definitely wasn't easy. That process, I want to say, is still kind of ongoing. Like right now, even as positive of a person that I am today, and that I feel like I'm a servant leader. I'm always doing things to pour into the community and to help people. But every once in a while, you're gonna run into somebody from your past, right? You're gonna run into somebody that hasn't seen you in 10 years, 15 years, and the first thing they're gonna talk to you about is something that you don't even involve yourself with
Right, the
anymore.
old life.
So exactly. So the stuff comes up. It's not as often now, just because I think God has kind of taken me out of certain areas to where I don't really deal with it. But it was very tough, man, because a lot of the people that I was really close with, like really close with. I mean, some people, how you have people that you call your brother. I mean, y'all not blood, or y'all might not be, in the same family, but y'all have done some things together and you trust them and you've had them around your family and I had to personally cut ties with a lot of people to
Right.
change my life. Like I couldn't say I wanted to be a certain way and still be in the same place, dealing with the same people, doing those same things. Like I just expected that those people will respect the fact that I wanted better for my life without judging me and stuff like that. But ultimately it wasn't, that wasn't true. I would run into people, and it would be times where, man, I'm talking about, like, I remember being places, even as man, about 4 years ago, I was with my wife somewhere and ran into somebody from a situation, way back when, and it was just like my wife could see it on my face. She's like, "You okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm good." You know what I'm saying? Dude didn't say nothing to me. I didn't say nothing to him, but we got in the car and I kind of told her what was going on. And she was blown away by the story. I'm like, she's like, "Why didn't you say anything? We could have just left." I'm like, "Nah, it's not that, because I'm not that person anymore."
Right.
I just didn't know if that guy, what I mean, like would look, have vengeance in his heart or whatever, So, the process, to answer the question is really tough. But if you're focused on your future and you're focused on doing right, I believe, and and of course, I'm a Christian, and my faith is in God. I walk by faith and not by sight. So I found that, focusing on Him, I know that He's going to get me through everything. So that's where my strength really comes from. But yeah, it's been tough, man. It's been a gradual process. But now I think I'm pretty much out of that now. You know what I mean? For the most part, I don't deal. People know, they see Tony now. They'll Tony don't do that, or he ain't over there, or don't approach him with that, because I'm telling you, he ain't he ain't that type of person. So I think people get it now, but initially it was very hard, very hard.
Right. Now, as transition now, and you're, putting all that stuff, way behind you, and you talk about like kind of like being like a servant, kind of like a mentor, especially to young people, like how do you use what you experience to kind of help like younger people or just other people in general, like just give them stories that you've experienced to kind of keep them away from those bad things or get them away from the bad things they're currently in?
Yeah, the first thing I tell them, man, is that what you're seeing right now, that you think is cool, it won't be cool in 10 years. You get what I'm saying? Like I try to put it into terms that they can understand, because the things that I was doing, because of what, my environment and the things that were presented to me, I thought that's how I had to live. I thought that success was determined, by the things that I would do in the neighborhood, or the stuff that, people would tell you, "Oh, you got to do this, you got to do that." But ultimately, that stuff I learned, I went through some experiences that taught me, dude, if you do that, you're not going to have an opportunity to have a life out here. You're not going to have an opportunity to, have a family and create wealth and do these things that you want to do. So I tell them right away, look, what you're hearing in the music that you're listening to is entertainment. You know what I'm saying? Like what you're seeing on TV is entertainment. You need to be yourself. And, I had an issue with being myself at a young age. I didn't realize that, the person that God made me to be was who He made me to be. He didn't make me to be like the guys that I seen on the block. You know what I'm saying? Like, so a lot of these kids, they're not at a place in their life where their individuality, where they're not in tune with their individuality, like not knowing they're not accepting who they are. And so that's the first thing I tell them, be yourself. Like if you want to be a business owner, like you want to start a clothing brand, like start that. Like you may not be making the money that you seeing these dudes make on the block, or the money that they're talking about in the music and stuff like that. But the reality is that those guys aren't doing the things that they're talking about. It's just entertainment. So I try to, come at them real, and let them know, like, what you're hearing and what you're seeing is just entertainment. It's not real. So you much rather, take the route that you're on right now, whether, what, I'm here for you. If you want to start a business, I can help walk you through that process. I can help you in any way, shape, or form to keep you away from that. And some of these kids I deal with, man, they're literally like 1 foot in, 1 foot out the streets. You know what I'm saying? And so you got to break it down to them in a way that it's going to appeal to them. And, talking about being a business owner at a young age, telling them what they can have in 5 years if they make the right decisions.
Right.
Stay away from this group of people and that group of people. They start to see the big plan. And then when I really tell them my life, because they look at me and they look at my Instagram, and the first thing they see these kids, and my kids, I got a son in high school, and his friends say it all the time. They're like, "Is your dad rich?" You know what I'm saying? Because this is the thing. They look at my Instagram, they see what I wear, and they automatically think like that I'm this type of person, because they're trained to believe that if you have this type of clothes, if you you know, if you drive this certain type of car, then you do these certain activities,
Right.
right? And then we don't have to go into detail about those activities, but we know what they are, right?
Right.
And
Yes.
so, you know, they always ask my son, they're like, what does your dad do? He's like, well, my dad's a basketball coach. You know, he's an entrepreneur. You know, he has, you know, a real estate investing business that he has, you know, and stuff like that. And they're like, oh, I thought y'all were rich. Now, even with my son telling them that, and them seeing evidence on my page of what the things that I have, which don't mean anything. I'm not saying that because material stuff that it can vanish today. But what I'm saying is, even through seeing that, kids still think that you have to be on the block to obtain all of that stuff. And so I'm trying to show these kids that, look, I don't do that. I'm not doing that. You get what I'm saying? So you could have this life and you could have it a lot sooner than I had it if you make the right decisions. You know what I'm saying? So that's the approach I take with the kids, man. I talk about decision making. And
Yeah.
you know, and yeah. So that's the route I go.
You know, I imagine it's gotta be tough. You know, I'm not currently living in in an environment like that myself. You know, I grew up over in the East Coast. I've been removed from it for, more than a decade now. But, I got to imagine being in that environment all the time. It gets a little, disheartening, kind of seeing kids, especially like young kids, high school, middle school, getting sucked into the life. Especially when you want to, just try so hard to kind of keep them away from all that, because you know how a lot of that ends up for a lot of people. But the question I want to ask for you before I transition kind of like away from this topic completely is, how much impact do you think the music that, kids listen to, I mean, primarily hip hop music, like how much of an impact do you think that has on a lot of these, young people kind of getting into that lifestyle?
A lot. And believe me, man, I'm a fan of music. I probably listen to more Christian rap nowadays than I do other music, but I love music. I grew up on really, really good music, Jay-Z and Nas and all of these guys. So I respect the music game a lot. But I just think that the message that's in the music today has transitioned into just this reckless, it's crazy. Everything involves a federal crime. You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
and these kids, they see the money and they see the jewelry and they see the cars and they hear what these guys are talking about. They experienced, and they take that and they think that that's what they have to do, and
Right.
it's not what they have to do, man. And so that's why I say, when you asked me earlier, I first and foremost I tell them, look, that's entertainment, because if these guys were still doing those things, they would be dead or they would be in prison for the rest of their life. Now, they may have experienced some sort of trauma or some life-altering situations growing up that through the grace of God, they were able to escape. But music was their escape. You know how they maintain their money right now? It's because they're in the business realm. You know what I'm saying? They're businessmen, they're businesswomen. That's how they're making their money and maintaining their money and growing their wealth. But the kids don't see that. So yeah, I think the music has a lot to do with it. I don't knock the artists, because that's what made them money. You get what I'm saying? That's what got them into the situation that they're in now. But the youth, man, especially the ones that don't have the two-parent household, the ones that don't have positivity surrounding them every day, and a ton of love and influence and people to look up to and mentorship. They hear that and they think, man, that's what I'm about to do. I'm about to go kick a door, or I'm about to, do this drug or that drug. You know what I'm saying? I'm about to hit the block and get this. I'm about to scam somebody. I got to do this to get that money, and that's not true. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I'm big on youth entrepreneurship, man. But I think music has a lot to do with it, man. It has a lot to do with it.
Yeah. And so, as you know, we're kind of getting away from that topic a little bit, because I agree. I mean, when it comes to hip hop music, I've been a fan my whole life, but I feel like there's a lot of people who don't separate what they're hearing from real life. That they take like the words that are being said in those songs as like literal translation. Like, I need to go out there and do this in order to get this lifestyle. And I don't really blame them, because there's not an, I feel like like we're, for the longest time, up until just recently, people who have black skin, they were only depicted, in the media as like either you got to be a rapper or like an athlete. That was the only way that you could, make any kind of money. And so there's a lot of like younger people who would see that and just think to themselves, like, those are my only options. They didn't know there was another way to do it. And so I really, I think it's a great thing that you're trying to mentor young people and trying to tell them, like, there's multiple ways to, find a way to have a good life for yourself, including starting, your own business, which you've talked to me about. You've started multiple businesses yourself. Tell me a little bit more about that. Like, what was that process like for you? Did you find it to be hard at all, like starting a business? Like, what was that process like?
Yeah, that's kind of crazy, man. And I know right before we talked, and I know we're transitioning into a new topic. My last meeting of today, like before I got on this call with you, I had a meeting with a close family friend and her son. And it was kind of like, he started a clothing line, created some, a design, and he had business cards and all of this, but they didn't know the next step. And I was the first person they called. They're like, look, I need you to sit down with me and my son. I'll buy you lunch. We need to sit down and, can you help my son get his business started? I'm like,
That's
okay, I
great.
got you. You know what I'm saying? I got
Yeah.
you. And to me, this is what matters to me. It ain't about the money. It's not about any, I just want to have an impact on the youth. Now today, I was able to sit down with a 17-year-old kid to help him fill out his paperwork for LLC. You get what I'm saying? And what to do and how to, get his stuff, the copyrights and all of this stuff, man. It was such a powerful lunch meeting that I had with them. And I think I walked away happier than he did because I just knew that I just sowed a seed, into the youth, man. So yeah, man, with that being said, I have started multiple businesses. I used to do music. That's the crazy part. My very first business was a music group. And I had to teach myself how to get everything, I could go through the copyright process. I had to form an LLC. I didn't have a mentor. I had to do research on my own. When you're talking 15 years ago or so, where the internet was a lot different, right? Like we have a lot more information at our reach now, where we can type in, to Dr. Google or whatever, and we can find things. Things are a
Right.
lot more accessible now, right? But back then, I literally had to teach myself, and I filled out the paperwork. I never forget filling out my first paperwork for my LLC. It was the incorrect paperwork. Sent it to the Secretary of State. They sent it back. I'm like, oh man, okay, what did I do wrong? And I had nobody to call. You get what
Right.
I'm saying? And ask. I'm like, all right. So I did some more research and then found out what I did wrong. Filled out the paperwork again. Sent it off. They sent it back again. You know what I'm saying? They're like, you did not put the LLC on the end of your business name. And it was really petty, but
Right.
there was some growth there. So the first time I did it completely wrong. Second time I was almost there and I didn't, complete the name correctly. And then the third time, of course, I filled it out right. The business was registered and everything like that. And so I formed a music group and I was able to make some money off of it. I'm not going to say I, made a ton of money while I was, riding in a Benz, 15 years ago or nothing like that. But what I did experience was how to start a business. And that experience took me a long way going into, the next few years of my life. And so, fast forward, a few years after I stopped doing music and decided that I just, I didn't want to be an old rapper. You know what I'm saying? Especially the fact that I wasn't established yet. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to transition out of this and I'm going to move on into something that actually would be beneficial, not only for my family, but for me. I wanted to do something that I enjoy because I love music and I enjoyed doing it. It never felt like work. So that's when I decided to start, the basketball organization.
Right. Yeah. You
And
told me a
yeah,
lot about that. About how you have like your own, like, just like a basketball team that you do for I
yeah.
think middle school, high school kids, or both, or one.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So so we have myself and my wife, I'll be crazy not to mention her because she's the bookkeeper. She's my personal assistant. She keeps in contact with the parents and she does it all, man. Manages the
Yeah.
bank account for the business and all of that. So yeah, man. But myself and my wife decided to start a travel basketball organization. And it was all on the premise of really giving back from the beginning, like taking kids from a similar upbringing that I had, single parent households, parents, they couldn't afford for their kids to play, because if you're familiar with travel basketball and the AAU, basketball was, AAU stands for the Amateur Athletic Union. If you have a basketball organization, you're usually registered with AAU if you're serious about it. But anyway, we started that, and we were just helping some kids, man. Nobody was paying us. We poured thousands of dollars into just traveling and playing in tournaments, and just having banquets and doing all kind of stuff, but just for the love of the game and just trying to make a difference. That turned into a business one day when I was kind of cornered by some parents of two new kids that I had brought into my organization. And the parents just flat out told me, like, you can't keep doing this for free. And I was like, for free? What do you mean? Like, I get paid by seeing the smiles on these kids' faces, knowing that their grades are right, knowing that their character is right, knowing that they're developing on the court and off the court. They're like, no, yeah, we get that. But I had one parent in particular, and I won't name drop, but it was actually a grandparent that flat out showed me how much he paid for his grandson to experience what he was experiencing with my organization. He showed me. He was like, this is what I paid for 3 months with another organization. I was like, what? You know what I mean? At the same time, I'm like, I don't really get where you're going. He's like, look, you can't keep doing this. Like, we're not going to allow you. And it, like, from that moment, it turned into a business. Like, I had to go home that night, have a rush meeting with my wife. Like, look, they said, the parents say we gotta come up with an amount that we have to charge each parent, and this, that, and the third, and we got to get insurance and some other stuff. And immediately that night I came back, scheduled a meeting. Well, my wife scheduled a meeting. I just spoke. And then we talked to the parents.
Yeah.
And we let them know, okay, this is the new wave. This is what's going on. And when we told them, this is what blew my mind. Like, this is what blew my mind. When we told them the amount, they were like, this is it? This is all we got to pay? Like, it was almost like we came in so low. Like, they were like, this is it? This is all? You sure? I'm like, yeah, this is it. And so, just like I say, fast forward another year, we had to go up again on fees. We had to, we ended up garnering a sponsorship just because I work in the community, and, our back to school events that we did. And before I know it, man, it was just, it was money coming in from that business itself. Just that business alone was enough to cover my bills every month, mortgage, car payments. You know what I'm saying? Like, because they understood that I needed to be paid for my time. It never was my wish, to be paid for my time. But when you pour your heart into something, you do what's right, ultimately you're gonna get what you deserve. And so, that's what happened with my organization. So that was my second business. And during that time, with that money coming in, I started a real estate investment company with a buddy of mine who really approached me with the idea. And I was like, okay, well, I got some extra funds coming in. Let's do that. And we formed another business with me, him, and one other guy. We partnered up to purchase some land and some investment properties and stuff like that. And so, just a high school dropout from the projects who faced legal issues at an early age, who made a bunch of dumb decisions. I changed my life around the day that I decided that I wanted to do better, and I didn't want to be a part of a life that would eventually lead me in the grave or locked up in a prison cell for the rest of my life. So yeah, man, starting a business is ultimately probably what really allowed me to take off, man, and continue to, sow even more seeds.
You know what? That's a great way to wrap it up, man. That is a great moral for a lot of people out there who are struggling, who are going through hard times, who not sure how they can turn things around for themselves. Like, there's always something around the corner, as long as you just have some faith and just keep pushing forward and keep trying for something else. I'm always about promoting kind of like stories and, just mentalities in general that are about just moving forward in life, because there's a lot of different things in life as far as challenges are concerned that can come up as obstacles, that can come up as something to knock you down, keep you down. So I applaud you for getting out of that lifestyle and just turning things around completely, and it seems prospering now. So the podcast again is called Mudtalk. Coach Tony, thank you for coming on the podcast today. Before we let you go, just one more time, just please plug your podcast so that people know where to find you.
Oh, for sure, man. So Mudtalk podcast, man. I drop a new episode every Thursday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and you can find that on Apple, Google, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you're you download and stream, music. You can get on there and you can find the podcast. But you want to hear some positive stuff, man. You're gonna hear some really cool stories, man, about my life and my childhood, man. So definitely, man, check me out. When you do check me out, man, get on Apple, man, write a review, man, leave a rating, man, because that helps the podcast grow. And yeah, that's where you'll find me, Des. I appreciate you, man. It was a pleasure getting on here. Like I said, man, mama, I made it. I'm on Independent Thought. So, man, I appreciate you, brother.
Yeah, well, definitely gonna hopefully have you back on again in the future. So I do appreciate you coming on. And for everybody else listening, we will take one last break. But when I come back, I will have my final thoughts of the day. Welcome back from the break, everyone. Thank you for sticking with us through this episode of Independent Thought. If you have not already, please hit that subscribe button right next to my logo. We do not always post one episode a week. Sometimes it's more than one episode a week. So it's always good to be subscribed because you never know when extra episodes might just come out of nowhere. So first thing I want to do is acknowledge the fact that I am taking a mid-season break. I will be taking off for 2 weeks. Be coming back in the middle of March to do the second half of this third season. There will be at least 10 more episodes before the season ends. As far as that is concerned, I have some guests already lined up. You will be seeing me also speak with the hosts of the Take Up Space podcast, and from the 336 Pull Up podcast, I was thankful enough to talk to the hosts of the Shall We Proceed podcast and Let's Be Real podcast. 4 different podcasters. We all had great conversations. I was so thankful to have them all on. I will also be interviewing 2 candidates for local office here in Missoula, Montana. I'll be interviewing Daniel Carlino, who's running for city council here in Missoula, as well as Jacob Elder, who is running for the mayor of Missoula. Both of those episodes will be coming in, I would want to say, the next month or so. I would look for them in April. That's what I'm projecting that they will come out as of now. I will let you know if any of that changes for any reason. So with that being said, those will be coming in the pipe the second half of the season, as well as some more just solo episodes with yours truly. Now, as far as these first 11 episodes go from season 3, please DM me your thoughts. What did you think? Which episodes resonated with you? Which ones were you kind of on the fence about? Tell me what you liked. Tell me what you didn't like. Just get a hold of me in my DMs, Instagram, Twitter. Best ways to get a hold of me. I would love to hear anything that you have as far as feedback is concerned about how these first 11 episodes went. So in regards to this episode that I just got done, and not just this episode, but the episodes that I've done so far this season, we have spent a lot of time kind of coming after the shortcomings of not only Joe Biden, but of what happened with Donald Trump at the end of his presidency, some other things going on in the world in regards to China and those concentration camps, or Elon Musk's new technology, Neuralink, just a lot of negative topics in general. And I know that it's hard to be consistently up to date with the news and with information like this because it can be discouraging. It can feel as though it's like a giant weight. Like, how do you deal with all of this negative information? And I completely understand. That's part of the reason why personally I don't have this as a daily show, because I need a break from this information too. So this is a weekly thing for me. But what I want to say is that knowledge is really power. There have been so many times in our history where, one of the contributing factors to why so many bad things happen in this country is because the public is more or less unaware of the truth. And so at any moment in time, if you're asking yourself, what can you do in order to do something about all of this, you can just stay informed. And that was one of the things that really was important for me, because I think this past summer, when we were watching all of these protests happen, I found myself asking myself a really important question, like, what can I do about all this injustice in the world? Like what can I do? And some people went out and protested. Some people, like wrote letters to local representatives. Some people made calls. Like everyone tried to do something in a way to be engaged in politics because of what was happening this summer. And for me, this kind of manifested. I was already kind of doing this podcast, but I was kind of on the fence about it. I wasn't really sure if I was going to continue it. But when I saw all that happen, I knew that this was going to be my outlet, my way of being involved. And not everyone's going to start a podcast, but I think just being informed and sharing information is one of the best ways to stay engaged. And if you're not sure what you can do, sharing knowledge is always a good idea when it comes to just making sure that everyone's aware of what's going on in the world. And so, with that being said, please share this podcast. Share these episodes, the episodes that you do like, share them on your social media so that other people can find them, and share information just out, not even just this podcast, but just other places too, like other information that you get, whether you watch a good YouTube video or you hear another good podcast or you see an article that you like. Let's always be sharing the information that matters. But again, please share my podcast because that'd be great. So, with that being said, I want to thank all of you for again tuning in to another episode of Independent Thought. And as I have been doing so often this season, I'm going to leave you with a quote for the day, which is, all that we are is a result of what we have thought. And so, with that being said, think positive thoughts, people. See you next time.